They stole my voice and made me believe that my nephew was in prison. I gave away all our money, even the money I had saved for my mother's funeral. But instead of keeping quiet, I found them. My name is Lauren. I live in a small town in Iowa where people still wave at each other at stop signs and bake too much around the holidays. I keep things quiet. Predictable. I work part-time at the local library, take care of my mother whose health has been fading steadily for 3 years now, and on Sundays, I go to the church I've been attending since I was 7. There's nothing flashy about my life. And I liked it that way. Until the call. It was 1:07 a.m. when my phone rang. I jolted awake like someone had slammed a car door in my chest. I sleep with my phone under the pillow ever since Mom's fall last winter. I didn't even check the screen, I just answered. Aunt Lauren. The voice was shaking, cracked like it had been crying hard. My heart immediately clenched. Noah. It sounded like him. Not exactly, but close enough. I could hear the tears, the ragged breathing. I could feel the fear dripping through the line. I messed up, he said. I was at a party and someone drove drunk and hit a parked car. They said I let them borrow my ID to get in. They arrested me, Aunt Lauren. I'm in a holding cell and they're gonna move me to General in an hour unless I post bond. Everything inside me went tight. My stomach twisted. My breath caught somewhere in my throat. General population? In jail? I've seen the documentaries. Read the horror stories. Noah, my sister's sweet, geeky, straight-A son, he wouldn't survive 5 minutes in a place like that. I need $5,000, he said, and then broke down again. Please don't tell Mom. She'll lose it. I just need you to help me. I swear I'll pay it back. I didn't think. I didn't reason. I just moved. Grabbed my laptop, hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped it. The savings account I'd been quietly building for months, the one meant for my mother's eventual funeral, her last wish for a proper send-off, it stared back at me like it knew what I was about to do. $5,000. Gone in less than 3 minutes. I got a text a few seconds later from a strange number with the account info. I followed every instruction exactly. I didn't even stop to take a breath. That's how deep the panic was. That's how real the danger felt. When the money sent, I sank back into the couch, shaking. I told myself I did the right thing. That I'd saved him. That I'd protected my family like I always did. I couldn't sleep after that. I paced. I prayed. I checked my phone every few minutes, waiting to hear he was safe. At 8:21 a.m., I called my sister's house. Noah answered. Cheerful. Bright. Mid-bite of some breakfast sandwich. I will never forget the way the room tilted. How I suddenly couldn't breathe. How the walls seemed to lean in, suffocating me. He wasn't in jail. He was at college. Laughing. Completely fine. And just like that, the floor gave way beneath my life. When I hung up the phone with Noah, I just sat there staring at the wall. My living room was still dark except for the slice of morning sun sneaking in through the curtain. The clock ticked. My mother coughed softly from her room. The world cruelly kept turning. I felt like I had just woken from a trance, only now the damage was real and irreversible. I'd sent $5,000 into the void. No confirmation. No receipt. Just a fading trail of numbers I couldn't follow. The first thing I did was check the transfer. I knew it had gone through, but I had to see it. Like reopening a wound to confirm it's still bleeding. Then I called the police. I hoped, they'd react with outrage. That they'd leap into action, trace the number, launch some digital dragnet and recover the money within hours. Instead, the woman at the station let out a long sigh and said, "Yeah, that's been happening a lot lately." I blinked. So what do I do now? We'll file a report, she said, like she was reading it off a script. But honestly, once the money's gone, it's gone. These guys usually operate out of state. Sometimes even overseas. Overseas. I could hear the clicking of a keyboard on her end, the distant murmur of someone laughing in the background. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the phone and shake it until anyone cared. I thought it was my nephew, I said, my voice cracking. It sounded like him. He said he was in jail. I didn't think. She lowered her voice a little, like she'd finally realized I wasn't some clueless old lady with money to burn. They use AI now. To mimic voices. They scrape audio from social media. It's not your fault. But it was, wasn't it? I was the one who panicked. I was the one who hit send. I was the fool. When I hung up, I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I went into my mother's room, fluffed her pillow, and fed her breakfast like it was any other day. She asked why I looked so pale. I lied. said I didn't sleep well. She's too fragile to carry this. If she knew I gave away the money we'd saved for her final arrangements, her casket, her service, the plot next to Dad, she'd never forgive me. I don't know if I'll ever forgive me. That afternoon I made tea and sat by the window, watching the wind blow through the cornfields. My hands kept twitching like they needed to be doing something. Fixing something. But there was nothing to fix. I thought about calling my sister, but what would I say? That I let a stranger fool me into thinking her son was rotting in a cell? That I was dumb enough to fall for a scam that apparently happens every day? The humiliation was bottomless. And the silence was worse. No one to blame. No one to confront. No one to punish. Just me. And the hollow echo of my own stupidity. That night, after Mom went to bed, I poured myself a small glass of wine, something I rarely do, and opened my laptop. I typed in voice scam jail nephew and scrolled. Article after article. Forum threads. Reddit posts. Local news clips with grainy mugshots and tired headlines. All of them saying the same thing: elderly woman scammed. Fake emergency call. $10,000 lost. And buried in the comments, always the same refrain: how could anyone fall for this? Because it wasn't just a phone call. It was fear. Raw, suffocating fear for someone I loved. They knew how to pull that string and I danced like a puppet. But as I kept reading, something shifted. I started bookmarking the stories. Taking notes. Tracking patterns. Scammers don't just vanish. They move in circles, scripts. They rely on shame to keep us quiet. Maybe I couldn't get the money back. But maybe I could do something else. I could speak. Warn. Shatter the silence. Maybe it wasn't too late to fight back. For the next few days I barely slept. It wasn't insomnia, not in the traditional sense. It was something darker, itchier, like my brain refused to let go. I'd close my eyes and hear his voice again. Not Noah's real voice, but the almost perfect imitation. The breathlessness, the panic, the begging. It lived in my ears like a haunting. I couldn't shake it. So I stopped trying. I dove headfirst into the depths of the internet, letting it consume me. At first it was just basic searches. Voice cloning scams, AI phone fraud, nephew and jail phone scam. But those led to articles, and those articles led to Reddit threads, and soon I was knee-deep in cybersecurity forums filled with angry, broken people like me. There were patterns. They always called late between 12 and 4 a.m. because that's when your guard is down. They always used a sense of urgency: jail, hospitals, car accidents. And they always used family. Sometimes they cloned voices from TikTok or Instagram. Other times they just mimicked emotions well enough to fool the brain into filling in the gaps. It wasn't just elderly people falling for it. That surprised me. There were parents, siblings, even teenagers. It turns out if you love someone enough, you'll throw logic off a cliff without thinking twice. I started printing out stories and pinning them on the corkboard in the laundry room. I told Mom it was for a research project, which wasn't technically a lie. In the past, I'd always seen myself as small. Invisible. I paid my taxes, returned my library books on time, sent Christmas cards with glittery stamps. I wasn't a warrior. I wasn't the kind of person who went after criminals. But now every time I stared at that corkboard, something tightened in my chest. They picked the wrong woman. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about the fact that I'd been violated. Emotionally manipulated. Stripped of my instinct and dignity in the span of a 3-minute call. And I knew I wasn't the only one. So I made a decision. I signed up for a burner email and created an anonymous profile on a scam tracking forum called Voicebreakers. The name felt poetic. At first, I just read, watched, lurked. Then I started commenting, sharing my story in pieces. People replied with sympathy, but more importantly, they offered tools. Names of app scammers used. Tracing methods. VPN habits. A man from Wisconsin even sent me a PDF on tracking digital wallets. It felt like discovering a secret army of the broken and furious. People who'd once curled up in the same shame I'd lived in but had clawed their way out of it. One night, I got a message from a woman named Junebug. She said they hit my husband the same way. Took $7,500. We traced the crypto wallet to a drop account in Miami, but the trail went cold. I want to go further. I want in. I didn't know what in meant. But I replied, so do I. That night, I sat in the dark, watching the cursor blink on my screen, and for the first time since the call, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. Like maybe, just maybe, I could reach back through the wires and bite. Junebug's messages were sharp, quick, and always came late at night. 1:12 a.m., 2:04 a.m., 3:33 a.m. I imagined her like me, hollow-eyed in the glow of a laptop, hunched over a mug of stale coffee, too angry to sleep, too burned to stop. She had a tech background, used to work in fraud prevention at a credit union, she said. She'd lost her husband's funeral fund the same way I'd lost Mom's. That alone made me feel tethered to her. We weren't just victims. We were caretakers who got caught with our backs turned. She had already been chasing her scammer for 3 months. They launder it through crypto, but if you catch them between wallets, sometimes you can see the transfer, she wrote one night. They slip up. You just need timing and luck. Then she sent me something I didn't expect, a partial IP address. Tied to an account linked to your payment. They messed up. Opened the crypto wallet with a compromised phone. Location pinged once before it vanished. Miami, Florida. I stared at the screen for a long time. It didn't feel real. My little Iowa life had never brushed that kind of heat before. I hadn't even been on a plane in over a decade. But suddenly it was like a string had been tugged across the map, pulling me toward a place I'd never been, toward a ghost who had stolen my peace. Junebug wanted to hire someone, a freelancer she knew from an underground tech circle. He called himself Pike. He's quiet. Fast. Expensive, but if there's anything left to find, he'll find it. I told her I didn't have money to spare. She said she'd cover it. Think of it as an investment in revenge. The next day, I transferred the last $800 from my emergency fund to help cover the costs. I didn't even blink. I was too far gone now. This wasn't about being careful. It was about following this pain to the end, wherever it led. Pike was strange. He didn't use full sentences. He'd send things like, got ping. Wallet rerouted. Second bounce in Nassau. Pattern sloppy. I didn't even understand half of it, but Junebug translated. They're getting nervous. Moving fast. That's good. One night, Pike sent a voice file. Thought you'd want to hear. I hesitated before opening it. When I did, my blood ran cold. It was my voice. My own voice. Someone had spliced a clip from a voicemail I left my nephew 6 months ago, me laughing, telling him to be careful during finals week. It was warped, tinny, but unmistakably me. Why would they have my voice? I typed. Junebug took a minute to respond. Because they build libraries. Every victim is a seed. You're probably in a folder with other, Aunt Lauren types. That's how they scale it. That's how they grow. It made my skin crawl. I suddenly felt naked. Like even my memory had been stolen. I wanted to scream. Or cry. Or smash the laptop against the wall. But instead, I sat very still, breathing shallow, eyes fixed on that blinking cursor again. They had made me a product. And now I wanted to become a virus in their system. The next night, Pike sent a file dump, PDFs, usernames, partial phone numbers, burner email lists. One caught my eye, a new account created the night of my scam call registered to a service in Kansas City. Closer. So much closer than I expected. Then something even stranger happened. At 3:17 a.m., I got a new message. Not from Junebug. Not from Pike. Just a burner address, no subject. Inside, one sentence. You should stop digging, Lauren. That was the moment I realized someone was watching me now. I stared at the email for a long time, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. You should stop digging, Lauren. My hands hovered above the keyboard, trembling. I reread the sentence. It didn't say please. It didn't try to persuade or explain. It wasn't a scammer running scared, it was someone calm. Watching. Someone confident that I'd gotten too close. I checked the sender's IP masked, of course. Routed through a dozen proxies. I forwarded it to Junebug. She replied instantly. They know your name. That means they've circled back. I felt suddenly aware of every window in my house. Every uncurtained glance of glass, the way the porch creaked when someone walked by, how my front door's lock had always been a little loose. This was no longer theoretical. This wasn't just about a wire transfer or a cold trail through Miami. They had reached inward. Into my inbox. Into my name. Into the place where I still thought I had control. The next morning, I drove 2 towns over and bought a prepaid phone. I made up a name, Becky Jordan, and told the clerk it was for a niece visiting from out of state. He didn't care. I paid cash. Back home, I unplugged my router and kept it off. Switched to mobile data. Taped over the camera on my laptop, just in case. That night, I told my mother I wasn't feeling well and needed rest. She didn't press. I locked my bedroom door and stared at my laptop until the blue light gave me a headache. I kept thinking about the voice clip Pike had sent. The weird, ghost-like echo of me. I remembered how many voicemails I'd left over the years, birthday calls, check-ins, long rambles to my sister about how insurance wasn't covering Mom's prescriptions. It could stitch together entire sentences from my past. Entire identities. What if someone used my voice next? The idea chilled me more than the money ever had. At 2:13 a.m., Junebug messaged, "We have a link. Kansas City account ties to a private Signal chat. Pike's working on it." Then, just 5 minutes later, another message from her. "Wait. Something's wrong. Account just went dark." We sat in silence for a bit, just blinking dots in unfinished sentences. Then Pike messaged for the first time directly. "Someone scrubbed it. Like, military level fast. We're being watched." I stared at the screen, not knowing what to feel. Fear? Definitely. But under it, anger. Righteous, blinding, seething anger. Because how dare they? How dare they pluck desperate people from the world like fruit, hollow us out with grief, and then have the gall to tell us to stop looking? I got up, walked outside, and stood barefoot in the yard. The grass was cold and wet, and the stars felt too close. I imagined someone watching me from behind a screen. Some faceless thief smirking in the dark. I whispered, "Come find me then." Not because I was brave. Because I was too tired to be scared anymore. Inside, I messaged Junebug, "What would it take to meet in person?" She didn't respond right away. I waited a full hour. Then finally, "You sure?" I wrote back, "I want to burn this thing down. Completely." She told me she could meet in Kansas City. Public place. Neutral ground. A weekend from now. I booked a bus ticket. One way. If they wanted to watch me, fine. Let them. I was done hiding. And I wasn't leaving until I had a name. A face. Or something I could drag into the light. The bus pulled into Kansas City just after noon on a Friday. I hadn't told anyone I was leaving, not my sister, not my friends at the library, not even my mother. I left meals labeled in the fridge, called her doctor to schedule a check-in, and wrote a note that simply said, "Back soon. Be safe." I didn't know what I was expecting stepping off that bus. A chase? A confrontation? A camera crew? But the truth is, real life doesn't look like that. Real life looks like a woman with tired eyes and a weathered denim jacket sitting alone at the back of a quiet coffee shop on Main Street. Junebug? Of course, that wasn't her real name. She told me later it was a pet name her husband used to call her before he died. He used to say I was the only bug he ever loved. She smiled softly. He hated bugs. Her real name was Dana. She was 48. Lived outside Tulsa. Lost her husband to cancer, and 3 months later, lost everything they had to a scam that started with a single call from a hospital billing department. She looked like someone who'd carried too much grief for too long. But she had a steeliness to her too. The kind that made you lean in when she talked. She brought a laptop. Opened it like a weapon. "This is what we know," she said, scanning the screen. "The account that pinged your transfer? It links to a messaging hub we've been watching for weeks." Pike confirmed the data dump matches patterns from at least 12 other known scams in 4 states. Voice mimic, fake arrest, urgent transfer. All AI-assisted. All running through 2 rotating crypto wallets. I watched as she clicked through names, usernames, tiny blips of chat logs. "Here's the thing," she said, leaning forward. "Last week, someone posted a message to that hub. Not just code. A sentence." She turned the screen toward me. It read, "The woman in Iowa is still looking." My stomach dropped. "They're tracking me?" Dana nodded. "You stirred the hive." I felt dizzy. "So what now? Do we go to the police?" She let out a dry laugh. I tried. They barely know what AI voice spoofing is. They don't have jurisdiction over crypto crime. These guys know it. That's why they keep doing it. She clicked again, this time to a blurry image. A still frame from a parking garage camera near the Kansas City Signal Tower. Pike caught a lead. "This man accessed the drop account an hour after your transfer." The image was low quality, but the figure was tall. Male. Baseball cap. Backpack. Walking quickly toward a nondescript gray sedan. We couldn't see his face. But it was something. A body. A presence. "He's our middleman," Dana said. "They use him to cash out and redistribute." I looked at the image, my mouth dry. "So we follow him?" Dana met my eyes. "Only if you're sure. Once we go forward, there's no pretending this didn't happen. You become part of it." I thought of Mom. Of the savings I'd never get back. Of the night I sat alone in my living room while a stranger wore my nephew's voice like a costume. I was already part of it, I said. They made me part of it the second they dialed my number. Dana smiled, something fierce flickering behind her eyes. Then she slid a flash drive across the table. Here, she said. This has everything we've got. Keep it hidden. If anything happens to me, go to Pike. He'll know what to do. I stared at it. That tiny piece of plastic that now carried names, numbers, shadows. And then just before we stood to leave, her phone buzzed. One message. She looked at it, and the blood drained from her face. She turned the screen toward me. It was a photo. Of me. From that morning. Getting off the bus. Captioned. You're not the only ones watching.